Welcome to the Modernize Podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the Cold Fusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community.
Hello and welcome to the Modernize Podcast, CFML News Edition. It is February 14th, 2023. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody.
Have I told you I love you today, Eric?
You have not. It's a little weird that you chose today to do that too.
I think our Patreon should be lovely today.
Our lovely Patreons. I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
This is episode 184. I am Eric Peterson, and with me is Brad Wood, who evidently has told me he loves me. I'm sure in a purely platonic way.
In the season of Valentine's Day.
You know who else we love? We love our sponsor, Order Solutions, the makers of all your favorite boxes out there. You can say thanks and give back by liking and subscribing to these videos on YouTube, starring our repos on GitHub, subscribing to this podcast wherever you get your podcast from, coming over to CFCasts and signing up for an account, free or paid. We got lots of cool content coming up on that too, which we'll cover later. Buying something special from the Box Life store for that special someone in your life. Or one of Ordis's mini books like 102 Cold Box Quick Tips and Tricks, or Learn Modern Cold Fusion in 100 minutes.
Or you can get a tattoo with our name on it. That's also valid.
It is. In a heart, in the spirit of Valentine's Day.
Little Ordis Solutions logo with a little heart around it and an arrow through it.
Could you do the Ordis swirl as a heart?
I'm sure you can do anything if you're good enough at Photoshop.
Ordis design team. I want the Ordis swirl as a heart. Thank you.
Coming soon to the Box Life store. So our lovely Patreon supporters we have 42 of them, by the way, which is the correct answer. They are providing 100% of the funding for our Modernize or Die podcast, which is pretty cool. Patreon site is www.patreon.com/ortussolutions. And our second goal that we are working on, we are 37% of the way to fully funding the hosting of ForgeBox.
Woo! You know, it's crazy to think about how much I use ForgeBox every day. I wonder if people do that in other languages. Like, do people that are Node developers think, well, I download gigabytes of packages a day and I don't even think about it. So
that would be an interesting stat line in command box, is like tracking. Well, I guess you could just look at the size of your artifacts folder, I suppose. I was gonna say, like, tracking the size of every download and just being like, you've downloaded 7 gigs this month from ForgeBox. I don't know what you do with it, but
stats are sometimes just cool for being stats,
I love stats. Inputs number 6 on my strength finders.
All right, so if I look at my artifacts folder, let's see, it is some size. I don't know how to get the size of something.
Because you're on a Mac.
I mean, it should be just a Unix command, but I don't remember it.
On Windows, just right-click and hit properties, and you wait for like 3 years while Windows recurses
I can do that too. I'm just in the terminal, so I didn't want to figure all that out. What do
you got?
Nope.
I only have 4 gigs in my artifacts, but I recently cleared a bunch of it testing our new artifacts prune command, which will prune old artifacts. So I don't know what I had before then.
3.89 gigs.
Ooh, I got you beat.
I mean, I bet a lot of those are just Adobe and Lucy versions, but that's okay.
Probably. Well, because what's fun about that is the latest version of Command Box will touch a file every time you install it, and it doesn't have to re-download it. It updates the last modified bit, and that's how the artifacts prune command works now in Command Box, which I think may still only be in the bleeding edge, where you can just delete all the files where the last modified date means it hasn't been touched, which is kind of cool. Dan Card asked, with a recommended Patreon level according to usage? I'm not sure what that means. Are you talking about people's artifact usage in ForgeBox? Or maybe he's saying if people use ForgeBox a bunch, we could be like, Hi there. We see you download 8 terabytes a year from ForgeBox. You want to pay for an account? You are our
that is
target
an idea.
audience.
There you go.
Don't tell Luis. He'll want to do it.
All right. Well, let's jump into some news and announcements. We have. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I was just going to read it. In case you missed it, from last week, the authentication bypass vulnerability in Mura CMS and Masa CMS, which is the open source fork of Mura, which used to be open source. There is a preliminary security advisory, which doesn't tell you what the actual hack is, but basically an authentication bypass generally means that you can access some portion of the administrative screens without actually being logged in. So if you are on Mura or Masa, you want to update. I believe the patch is available, and there is a deadline. I think there was a month out from the initial report of when the details will be published. Now, that said, I was talking about this earlier in Slack. I very strongly dislike when security researchers put out the hack details, which is basically a guide to hackers on how to exploit all the unpatched servers. I know it's incredibly common in the InfoSec community. I'm not necessarily targeting I believe Brian, who reported this. Just in general, when InfoSec people do it, I really hate it, because I think that it gives much more value to the hackers than it ever does just legitimate sysadmins who may be late on patching. And I know that that's how you get street cred in the InfoSec community, is you publish all the exploits you found. And I know that people say, well, it helps encourage people to patch and stuff, but I really, really hate it when people release basically here's how you go hack all these people guide a month after the patch. And unfortunately, that is exactly what's happening in this case. So if you do not patch your Mura or your Masa installations, the guide to hack you will be on the internet in a few weeks. So get your butt in gear. Let's see, is the deadline on this blog
March
post?
6th.
March 6th. So you have about 3 weeks to patch, and then instructions will be provided to everyone who wants to take advantage of you. And no one will feel sorry for you. I mean, I will, but the people who release it will not feel sorry for you. But that's important.
Yeah.
There's been a series of vulnerabilities found in Mura, and I'm not saying that to imply that Mura is insecure. I'm saying that I'm pretty certain the reason is people have been hiring InfoSec people to look at their software and say, hey, dig through this, use a fine-tooth comb, find anything you can find. I know that's how several of the most recent Lucy vulnerabilities were found. Was by large enough companies with a security budget who deployed Lucy, and they paid someone and said, hey, come look over every square inch of this and tell us any problems you find. And the vulnerabilities are found when that happens, which is overall a good thing. So it helps everybody. I don't know who it was who basically went out and paid for Mura to have such a magnifying glass put to it, but it's kind of cool that it helps strengthen these things, because at least it was reported in a what's the word, responsible disclosure, I believe is the phrase. Right. Meaning that they were given a chance to patch it and everyone's given a chance to update, as opposed to just pure black hat hackers that are just spread the information in the dark web. Is dark web, does that mean when you're using the dark mode in Chrome? Is that what that means?
I don't believe so. Otherwise, all developers are on the dark web. Or I should say most. But yeah. So we'll keep bringing this one up just in case you tune to some weeks and not others of the podcast, so that you can make sure that your Mura and Masa CMS installations are updated to avoid this vulnerability. Also, something we're going to be harping the next few weeks is the State of the CF Union survey for 2023. So this is very helpful to anybody who creates libraries, who support CFML, to know what versions we're running. I'm always curious how many old versions of Cold Fusion are still in use, who's still using Cold Fusion 8.
Ones, yeah.
I know we at Ortus use it to know when we can drop support for old versions or where we should be focusing our time. So Lots of great information in that. We will post that in the chat and the show notes. Please take the time to fill it out. It really helps anybody working in the CFML tooling and library communities.
And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably one of the people that actually pays attention to Cold Fusion social media. So you need to send this to all of your coworkers and friends and people that you know that probably don't pay any attention to Twitter and Facebook and CFML Slack, because those are the people we also want to hear from. So, and after you're done filling it out, please send it to everyone you know so we get as many responses as possible. Usually we get about 400 to 500 responses. It kind of varies per year, but the more responses we get, the better the statistics are.
That's right. That's how statistics work.
Sample size.
One place you won't need to share it, but you can come look at it, is on the ColdBox developer group on LinkedIn. We're pushing to get more people up there. We are posting our blog posts over there so you can get news about latest releases and other announcements from Ortus. So, the ColdBox developer group on LinkedIn, we'll put that link in the chat and the show notes. Come join us over there. Funny thing, when this push started at Ortus, I finally logged into LinkedIn since I think my senior year of college, and that's a funny place. I am endorsed for skills that I have never done in my life. And also had like a college professor endorse me for CFML. I didn't touch CFML in college. It wasn't until like a year after. So not sure where that came from, but thank you. Thank you for endorsing me.
I don't really do much on LinkedIn. Every time I go there, the little like notifications bar and the private messages thing, I'm gonna have like thousands of like unread stuff, and I get spam all the time. Hi Brad, I'm a recruiter looking for positive people to join a forward-thinking. Okay, whatever. Just
I was very surprised that like within 5 minutes of logging in, it wasn't a sponsored post. It was like a sponsored direct message from like a college, and I'm like, I don't know about this. So
what always creeps me out a little bit about LinkedIn is it would tell someone if you just viewed their profile. Like you would get a message that'd be like, Brad Wood, Eric Peterson viewed your profile today. I'm like, that's creepy. Like, and sometimes if I'm just kind of Googling someone and I see a LinkedIn result come up in Google, I'm like, I don't want to click on that. I don't want LinkedIn being like, oh, Brad was looking at your profile. I'm like, no, dude, get out of here, LinkedIn. You're a little creepy, man.
It's true.
You in the incognito tab.
Alrighty. Well, another announcement: CF Summit in East. Let me try that again. CF Summit East was announced. It will be on Thursday, April 6th in Washington, D.C. at the Marriott Marquis.
Woohoo!
I believe that was where the last CF objective was, if I'm remembering
which
this
one?
right. The last one.
Marriott Marquis. They were in the press building.
Oh, maybe that was the hotel. Maybe that was the hotel that they had hooked onto it.
It had like a connected hotel. That name does sound familiar. So I'm really excited to see this stuff come back up. During COVID, Adobe just kind of quit all the events, which is understandable. And so far, Vegas had came back, and I wasn't sure if they would get all the momentum back. And they're moving on with Summit East, and I think eventually they hope to look at redoing the Summit India as well. So we'll see what happens. But it's very good to see them not lose the momentum on that.
Absolutely. So this is a one-day event in DC from 8 to 4. We have put the link in the show notes and in the chat. I am trying to find real quick if this costs anything. I don't see anything about a cost. So if you're in the area, they even will give you free complimentary breakfast and lunch. So, free conference, free food. You just have to get there. So don't even need a hotel stay if you are close enough. Sounds like a good deal.
So I know Luis is looking at doing some sort of training around the same time, I think. I don't know if we've actually announced that or if that's still secret information. But I know we've been talking about getting something with Ortus going. Because this is happening at the same time as Dev Nexus, and Luis is going to try to be in DC for it. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see what comes out in that regard.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, I'm looking at the map. I'm pretty sure this was the same one. Could be wrong, but I'm gonna stake at least some street cred on it. Same one as the last CF objective. So
I won't fight you on it.
all right. So a lot of you may have noticed that we have a new CFML Slack invite app, if you will, server, because the Heroku free tier that we're using is no longer. It shuts off. It doesn't let you do all the fun free stuff it used to. So if you go to cfml-slack.net, you can sign up for an account, and you can share that with anybody that needs to come join us on the CFML Slack. We're also working one for our Ortus box team as well. And if Slack isn't your cup of tea, the Ortus community forum now has chat thanks to a discourse update. Want to tell us a bit more about that, Brad?
I can. I'm sitting here zooming into Google Maps, trying to see where in Washington D.C. the thing is. Yeah. So I was going to try to type up a blog post about this, and I just haven't had the time. But we use for our community.ortussolutions.com, which is our kind of general support community that replaced all of our Google groups and has all of the Google group content imported into it and users. It is a discourse forum, which is it's a Ruby on Rails app, but it's something that worked out of the box. It has a zillion and one features. It's super configurable. It has regular updates. And they recently released the ability to have a chat baked into the website you can enable. So we've enabled it on there, updated the software, and we're playing around with it. It's pretty cool. It adds a little chat icon at the top of the page. I don't know if you want to try to share your screen and show it or not. Adds a little chat icon at the top of the page, and you can get a little pop-up chat window on the bottom, or you can kind of like full screen it. You can have channels, you can have DMs, you can tag people, you can upload files, you can share files. There's all sorts of settings on how it works. You can also enable push notifications if you have the browser window open, which you have to do inside of your user settings. So you have to enable notifications. But it's not quite like a complete replacement of Slack, because it's not like its own dedicated app that's like always running on your computer. So if you don't have the website up, you wouldn't necessarily know if there's been messages. But anyway, feel free to go over to community.ortussolutions.com and click on that little chat icon, and you can play around, ping some people, talk in the general channel, and just give us another place for the community to get together and have some of those kind of stream of conscious conversations that don't always work well in a mailing list or a bug tracker where you just want to kind of go back and forth with somebody. But it's all baked into the community site, and right now it retains messages for 90 days, but we do have the ability to make that be as long as we want. So if people use it, we'll try to focus on it some more, but go play with it if you want to.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to being able to take part of a conversation and just make a topic from it, because I know that's usually what I want from Slack. Is there's some conversation and it's like, I just need to.
You can do that in Slack
Transfer
now,
this.
but you can
Ooh.
only tie it to only one Slack team can be tied to one discourse forum, if I recall.
Oh, got it.
It's limited. Because I had the integration set up in our internal Cold Fusion Slack, but I think it's like a 1-to-1 ratio. You can just have one discourse tied to one Slack, so it significantly limits the usefulness of it.
True. All right. Let's move on to some new releases and updates. So apologies if this was talked about last week. I didn't see it though. But QB9 has been released, 9.0, which is crazy to think about. In fact, I wrote a whole blog post about it, and we'll go over that in the blog post section. But to go over some of the changes, there was a few breaking changes having to do with dropping support for older versions of Cold Fusion, and some defaults that have been changed to be more performant or not mess you up as much, especially with dates. So you can go check that out now. Some of the cool new features were a entire SQLite grammar added by Jason Steinhauer. and something called SQL commenter support, which is a specification by Google. Actually, it made me think of like what Ben Nadal does, where he puts like a comment in saying where this query is executed, but on steroids. Because it runs per request, it can collect any sort of data that you want. You can register your own components. You can put in the current handler executing, the action, the current user logged in if there is one, things like that, and it will append it as a comment to the end of the SQL statement. And being a specification that Google has, there's tools out there that can consume that and then tell you things about your queries, like, hey, you had a slow query, and here is all the information we know about how it got executed. So pretty awesome stuff. Yeah, it was a really great release. Thanks to everybody who contributed. And we'll talk a little bit more later because I kind of wax nostalgic about 9 major releases of QB. All right. And then in case you missed it, CB Security 3 was also released. Another major version. So you can go and check out all the new documentation at cbsecurity.ordisbooks. Sorry, coldbox-security.ordisbooks.com. Though we should probably have a CB Security redirect. So this will go over all the new features, new CSRF protection settings, security headers like HTTP strict transport security, cross-site mitigations, and firewall logs. There's a lot going on there. You can go ahead and check that out in the show notes or on the Ordis Solutions blog. All right, let's talk about webinars, meetups, and workshops. The first thing we want to bring up is our Ordis calendar for on Google, showing you all the fun Ordis Fridays that are coming up. We have our February webinar that is this Friday with the one and only Luis Mahano going over all the great new stuff in CB Security 3. So keep an eye on that and on our website for the time. Usually it is 11 Central. I'm not sure how that changes with Luis being on Spain time. Spanish time? How do you say that?
Across the pond time.
Across the pond. Western European time.
And that'll only be like, I don't know, 4 or 5 in the evening for him, probably.
So I know he's 10 hours from me, so 10 to 6 p.m. No, 8 hours from me. I can't do math.
Let me just Google time in Spain. It's 7:24 p.m. there right now, and we're an hour and a half after the webinar would have started, so that would be 6 p.m. his time.
There you go. In any case, it's going to be awesome. Come learn all about CB Security 3 and see the cool new features that have been added. CFCasts has some new content, Brad. You want to talk to us about that one?
Yarp. So we have more of the 2023 ForgeBox Module of the Week series, which is derived from the content we have here on the podcast. We have also our 2023 VS Code Hint, Tip, and Trick of the Week series as well that we cover here on the podcast. And those are our recent releases. And then coming soon, we have the Command Box Screencast series that I recorded recently. Those are all scheduled. I forget what day they're actually going to start coming out. Gavin worked on getting the schedules in for all of that. But I
Tomorrow.
have 20. Oh, yes. I have 27 screencasts that I recorded on Command Box, which it had been a long time since I'd made screencasts. So I finally got around to it. I had a huge list. So some sneak peeks of some of the screencasts coming to CFCasts are using environment variables to override config settings and server settings, how to set the case sensitivity of your web server, server profiles, task runner lifecycle events. I have 3 videos on mod CFML. I show how to do it with IIS, how to do it with Apache, how to do it with Nginx, a bunch of security client cert auth examples, and much more. So that's all coming in the Command Box screencast series, which will arrive in CFCast first. We also have a CB Wire series from Grant, which is coming. Is his poll still open that he had asking what people wanted?
It is not anymore.
Okay, so there were 22 total votes and 13 voters, and it looks like the Twitter clone was the clear winner with 84% of the votes. So that's pretty cool. I don't know what the time frame is on that, but that'll be coming soon. We have apparently a Cool Box Elixir series from Eric. Did you know about that? Is that news
Oh,
to
I
you?
did. Yes, I've been working
good,
on that.
Good. Oh, awesome. And getting started with Content Box CMS from Daniel. Lots of stuff coming on CFcast. Jinx.
All right. If you want to see when all those Command Box 5 videos are coming, we have put the link in the show notes and in the chat. Or you can go to the CFCast.com browse page, and you will see these lovely icons showing you all of the upcoming and when they're coming. These are all free videos coming to Command Box, so you do not need to be a paid subscriber to see all these great Command Box screencasts.
Question, Eric. Does the CFcast site have the ability to like notify someone when something goes live? Can they say like, notify me?
Not at the moment.
That could be a cool feature. I was just thinking like on YouTube, if I go to like a future stream URL, there's a button that'll be like notify me when it goes live. It'd be kind of cool. That way, if someone's really interested in a video, they could have it,
Subscribe and smash that bell. Yep.
Yeah. You have to smash it. That's the verb of choice nowadays.
Yep. No, not yet, but that is in our backlog. So
cool.
Hopefully soon. All right, let's talk about some conferences. The next closest conference, it looks like, is GitHub Galaxy. This is the Enterprise GitHub conference.
Did they steal that name from us?
I don't think Galaxy has a trademark on anything. Nobody owns the trademark for Galaxy.
I don't think we trademarked it, but we did have the Ortus Galaxy that we used for a few years with Into the Box. So it's kind of our theme.
So I'm not exactly sure what to expect from the GitHub Galaxy event. It definitely is focused on enterprise, improving efficiency, security, and developer productivity. It looks to be free.
Hear global enterprise, I hear how we're going to monetize this baby. That's what I hear.
Maybe.
They're like, there's people out there and you have money and we know it. And you're going to pay us is what you're going to do.
But it's worth keeping an eye on because all of us use GitHub in some way or form, I believe. So
they really don't have any information on their site. Just it starts in 41 days, and here's an ICS file added to your calendar. That's kind of it.
Yep. After that, we have Dev Nexus, April 4th through 6th. Nexus. Unfortunately, we don't have any Ortus people speaking there this year, but it's still a conference that we enjoy.
They did not accept their topics.
They did not this year. It is.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm pretty certain Mark Takata from Adobe is planning on trying to pop in there. He was asking me about it the other day. It looks like John Clausen and myself from Ortus will probably be going, and Charlie Earhart also had a talk accepted about updating Java at DevNexus, so he'll be speaking. So
awesome.
Anyway, there'll be a handful of people. Usually Ray Camden is there one way or another, whatever company he's working for at the time. Usually he'll get sent, and it's not uncommon to run into previous Cold Fusion guys there now working in other places. The work Couchbase, Peter Bell was there once. Never name that I'm totally forgetting off the top of my head, but yeah, it's a pretty fun place to be. So if you're looking for a tech conference in the Java space, there's definitely people you can meet up with if you're near Atlanta. Unless you're going to CF Summit East, in which case
that's right.
Pick one because they overlap.
They do. CF Summit East is on the last day of Dev Nexus, and not very close. I mean, Atlanta to DC, it's a few-hour plane ride if you wanted to try to do both. Sounds crazy to me.
If you have a private jet, you can pull them off.
We've covered CF Summit East. That is April 6th, 8 to 4. It looks to be a free event in Washington, D.C. Looking forward to that one. Vue.js Live is coming up May 12th and 15th, both online and in London. They claim 10,000 plus joining online globally, which is interesting, but also if you're just joining online, it's not like you're meeting them or doing anything with them. Anyways, 35 speakers, 10 workshops. You can go ahead and check it out at vuejslive.com. And then we get to the good stuff.
Into the box.
Into the box. The 10th edition. We have been doing some work selecting the talks, getting the website updated to give you a sneak peek, sending out a few of the speaker acceptance letters. Not all of them. So if you put in a topic and you haven't got one yet, don't worry. We're still in the process there. But sessions will be announced soon on the Into the Box website, intothebox.org. We are so very excited for this. May 17th through 19th in Houston.
And the registrations are open to attend. You can come register right now. I'm looking to see how many registrations we already have. Looks like we've already sold 7 tickets. So people are already signing up to get their space in line. And these are like real tickets as well, not just like internal, or just people. These are actual humans signing up for workshops and conferences.
We called it the early bird. I'm trying to remember what there was a Vue.js conference that had like a term for this, like buying blind before you knew the speakers. I wish we really used that.
What it is.
So, because that's the price you're getting right now. You don't know the speakers. You're getting a discount for having faith that we're putting on a good conference. So, speakers will be announced soon, though, and it's gonna be great. We're very excited. All right, a couple more after that. We have Vue Conf US. This is in New Orleans, May 24th through 26th. The week after Into the Box. So if you have to pick one, we know that you're picking Into the Box. It's fine. Vue can just take a back seat. It's all good. That includes a workshop day and the main conference, 2 days of the main conference. Check them out at vueconf.us.
And finally, CF Camp is back in Munich, Germany. Well, Freising is where the hotel is, but you fly into Munich on. But yes, super excited about that. It has not happened since COVID. And I mentioned I'm having to choose this year between CF Camp and an actual like outdoor camp that I usually help out with because they are scheduled at the same time. Good chance I'm going to go with CF Camp, but I need to make up my mind on that soon because the call for speakers is open for another month. I believe March 15th, I think, is the deadline for that. Definitely looking forward to going back, and I'll probably go with a family member or two, just since it's like if I'm going all the way over there, stay a couple days, do some sightseeing, have your wife come along or something. It's usually works out, but kind of figure that all out. But I'm super excited to have CF Camp back, and I hope that it's a successful year. I know it can be hard to get momentum back up when you've been off for a few years, but hopefully it'll be a really big year because it is a fantastic conference.
It really is. I only got to go once, and I've been itching to go back. I do wish it was cheaper on the airfare.
Yeah, that's the worst part. So for Luis, he said it cost him like $50 to travel. It's nothing because he's right next door.
Man.
But
yeah.
the hotel they're at, that Marriott Hotel, is funny. It's called the hotel name is Marriott Hotel Munich Airport. Even though it's like 15 minutes from the airport, it's like in the next city over, but it's like basically within driving distance. The hotel is a really nice hotel, and I love the fact that they have a really good restaurant and a bar that stays open like super late. So there's a real nice place to hang out and get food and drinks and lattes and stuff and the coffee. bar that they have there, and just like hang out and talk to people. It's a really great place. It kind of sucks when you're at a conference and there's nowhere like to go hang out with anybody, at night.
Yeah. So that's a great conference. If you can make it there, definitely reserve those dates, June 22nd, 23rd in Munich. And if we didn't give you enough, comps.tech, they got you covered. You can go check out any other conferences to your heart's delight. Sticking with the Valentine's Day theme. All right, let's talk about some blogs, tweets, and videos of the week. So we continue our Ben Nadell dive into Turbo and Stimulus. This is the framework from Basecamp to kind of augment a traditional server rendered application with some nice single page application features. We will give you the links to these. We're not going to dive too much into it here, mostly because Brad and I are not in this world a lot. We need to get someone like Grant on here to talk to you more about this world, as Grant does a lot of this with CBWire. So the two articles this week, we have Exploring the Turbo Drive Back Button Caching Behavior. So this sounds like it's hijacking that back button and doing its own different routing for you with Hotwire. And then the second one was using Stimulus to preload links on Hover and Hotwire and Lucy. So Stimulus is the JavaScript framework, I guess, that goes along with Hotwire, and making it so that when you hover a link, it will preload it so it's a faster navigation, which I thought we could just do with like the preload attribute, but shows that I have not read this article closely. So
yeah, the back button functionality is always important anytime you have the single page app kind of. I don't even know if SPA is the right phrase, but you click on the page, something updates, and you're like, oh, I want to go back to the previous thing. And so it's annoying when you hit the back button and then like it just completely navigates away from the page. And like, well, I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to go back to the previous view I was on. So handling that is definitely a win for the user experience.
Yeah. I know that, it's been a while, but JavaScript added an entire history API to be able to manage that. So now in a single page application, you can pop something onto the history and it actually influences the back and forward buttons. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is using the same kind of behavior, and maybe the caching part is you can tell it what parts to keep and what parts to ignore. So again, if you are interested in these experiments that Ben is doing, we also would push you towards CBWire, or maybe not push you towards, but say check it out. It's a very similar technology stack, but made using Livewire and Alpine.js, which I find Alpine to be a lot simpler than Stimulus, personally. And if you instead prefer to write your views in JavaScript and take advantage of like Vue or React that way, CB Inertia is a project that I made a while ago. It's still kicking. So all of those projects will help kind of give you a more snappy single page app feel to your application. Just a little bit different ways on how you write it. Some more CFML, some a little bit more JavaScript.
And both Inertia and CBWire have been around for a little while. Inertia more so. CBWire has 23 releases, so version 2.26. So there's a lot of development that's gone into that. So lots of options out there that you may not be aware of if, like you said, you're interested in those sort of things.
Yeah. Rounding up the Ben Nadell blog post, he talked about extending the current request timeout in CFML. This was specifically, he wanted a way to say, when you reach this point in the code, add X seconds to the request timeout, which is not how the CF setting tag works. The CF setting tag is, this is now the time. So
right,
he goes
you're
through
just updating the total, basically.
Right. So if you set it to 5 twice, it's just 5. So he goes through some kind of workarounds that could work. One was Adobe specific and would also require that like security setting that says you can touch Cold Fusion Java classes.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, as soon as you do that, all the people on shared hosting are like, "Oh, it doesn't work."
Yep. There's also some things you can do with get page context to get the current request timeout, and then do math and set it to something longer. So if that is what you need, where you need to be able to add time to the current request context, there are some workarounds that he has here for you.
I haven't actually read this. Is he doing something to figure out how long the page has been running, or is he just setting something in like the request scope when the request starts and just doing some math to figure out how much longer he needs?
He gets the current start time, figures out how many seconds that was, figures out how many seconds you want to increase it, and then makes that the current request timeout. So
it's probably pretty self-contained. I mean, I figure you'd probably also just toss get tick count into your request scope variable on a request start, and then you could just, without touching the Cold Fusion classes, you could get the same information.
Right.
That's kind of cool. Yeah, I saw him talking about this somewhere. I think it was on the Lucy forums. I didn't really read all of it, but he was digging into the page context, which don't have the same methods between Adobe, Cold Fusion, and Lucy server. It's kind of interesting that CFML in general and Adobe and Lucy both advertised we have a function called get page context, and it'll get you a thing which is a context of the page. But the objects you get back aren't necessarily the same and don't necessarily have the same methods. You quickly wind up in the weeds of undocumented stuff.
Yep. I put in a little related ticket for ColdBox that was put in maybe a few weeks ago by Gavin regarding request timeouts. We had noticed that on some of our tests, we'd all of a sudden start running into timeout issues. If you've ever dug into the test box runner files, usually at the very top, we set the request timeout to, like 5 nines.
9.
Yeah, so run forever because the test can take a while. But if you're running an integration test and at the top of your handler you have set request timeout to 60, because this is a long running action, that will overwrite all the test timeouts, right? Because it's all one request. So there's a proposal to add a ColdBox function for set request timeout that in a production environment would just call the CF setting as we've been showing, but then in a testing environment you can mock that to do nothing because you don't actually want it to change. So hopefully that gets into ColdBox 7. I haven't even checked the status of this. It is resolved, so it's probably in ColdBox 7 if we go look at it there.
It'd be interesting if the CF engine's allowed a way to tie into that kind of stuff, but I don't know if that would be overall good or bad. I remember Sean Corfield talking once about how Ruby as a language had a whole bunch of I don't know if meta programming was the phrase he used, but the ability to basically tap into those core, classes and override how they worked. Because he was saying he didn't actually really like it because people had the ability to do crazy stuff to the engine, which could be really unexpected, and then the runtime wouldn't work like you thought. But anyway.
Yeah, it's similar to how in JavaScript you can open up the prototype for array and redefine methods. You can do the same thing in Ruby where you can open up and extend one of the built-in objects and make it do whatever you want, which can be nice, but also when people start to rely on that.
And what would be interesting is if you could, because Lucy will let you declare tags. And that doesn't have to be the CF underscore type of tag, but CF Brad without the underscore. You can do that. What would be interesting is if you could do that at runtime, during the course of the request, if testbox could just redeclare the CF setting tag, right? And then all code from then on would actually call that tag. I mean, it'd be a similar way, but again, I mean, it's always kind of off in the weeds because that could go south, depending on what kind of crazy janky stuff you do inside of it. But anyway.
Yeah. I can confirm in here on my screen in ColdBox 7, the bleeding edge right now, there is a set request timeout method on the request context. So you can use that. It will call the CF setting command in normal use case, but in our mock request context, which is used in testing, it just stores it away for you in case you want to check it later. In case you want your test to say, hey, did you actually set the request context timeout to what I said?
You might want to make an assertion about that if that was part of what the code needed to do. Yeah.
So awesome stuff. Good job, Gavin and Luis, on that. Coming to a cold box near you.
As Dan Card said in the chat, with great power comes great ability to really screw things up.
Very true. I mean, a bit as a side note, but that's why, if I'm remembering right, we have array flat in JavaScript instead of array flatten, because MooTools did the whole prototype in like extending, but they did it in a way that is not how they wanted to do it for the official, ECMAScript, and so they had to choose a different name because it would just break everything. So, good times. Alrighty, and
so Lucy had a release.
They did.
Yeah. So Zach Spitzer put this out. So there's already been a Lucy 5.3.10 release. This is just another stable release with some patch updates. Basically, there were a few regressions and issues with the initial 5.3.10 release. So Lucy has put out 5.3.10.120. I don't know if the recommendation is that everybody upgrade or only people having issues. But there's a handful of bug fixes in there, nothing major. I know there is at least another 5.3.10 release coming soon. I don't know what soon means because I always hear it's like, quote, a week away, end quote, and like a month later it happens. But I know there's some larger stuff they wanted to put in, but they wanted to get out these little bug fixes, which kudos to Lucy. I think that's super important to keep the current release stable and get those regressions fixed right away, because when you break stuff on a release, people get to the point where they stop upgrading because they don't have time to deal with it. So if you need these bug fixes, they are now released. And like I said, there will be another release coming somewhat soon, I believe, as well, with some larger items.
Awesome. All right, and rounding it up, I mentioned I was going to come back to the QB9 blog post. As I was writing, just the updates, I was like, wow, how did I get to 9 releases? And so here's some fun facts for you about the QB project that you may not have known about. It started April 11th, 2016. That was before I ever joined Ortus. And back then, it was actually named Quick, which is now the name of our CFML ORM. I changed it 8 months later when I realized I probably want to use Quick for the ORM, and this is just something else. I originally made it because I was tired of writing pagination queries for Oracle. So for those of you that have never had the privilege of working with older versions of Oracle, there is no limit, there is no offset, there is no top. You have to
row number, isn't it?
You have to use row num and then wrap it in a subquery and do that.
Good.
And it was disgusting. And so that was actually the reason I started writing QB. So first 2 versions over the first 2 years, then I started working for Ortus. The next 7 have been under the sponsorship of Ortus. And it's spun off lots of cool stuff. We have schema builder and CF migrations and command box migrations to make database changes to see development data. Along the way, there was lots of contributions, which was awesome. But I felt like I wasn't keeping up with enough, being at like a computer, downloading the code and running like box, bump, patch, or minor or major to get some of these fixes out. So what do all developers do? I shave the yak and I make command box semantic release, so I could just change the commit message, merge it on my phone, and all of a sudden a new release was out. So I use that all over the place. A few other Ortus people do too. It's also inspired some other Ortus build projects. So awesome stuff there. Speaking of pagination, our paginator wrapper, CB Paginator, was heavily inspired by it. We made sure that they all work together. There's locking helpers we added to QB so that it could be used as a driver for our queues in CBQ. And of course, Quick, our ORM, is built entirely on top of QB. So like tons of stuff came out of this. It's been a crazy 7 years, and very grateful for Ordis for believing in QB. I still remember presenting this at, I think, Into the Box 2015 or 2016 over in Minnesota when it was before Dev Objective. Yeah. So crazy stuff. Thanks everybody who has contributed or used the library, and looking forward to the next 7 years of releases. Maybe not so many major releases, but who knows? We'll see. It's just a number.
Yeah, I'd like to see more people just check out QB and Quick. I know a lot of people are, including myself, are really comfortable with just writing stuff in SQL. And there's definitely a lot of ORM naysayers in general, because traditionally ORM has sucked in a lot of ways, and just philosophically ORM can have a lot of problems. So it never really caught on in the Cold Fusion community nearly like it did in like the Ruby world or the Groovy world, where everybody kind of uses it. I think it has a lot to offer when you're keenly aware of what it does and what it doesn't do, and where the good boundaries are. So I definitely like to see more people dig into to Quick, or even just QB, just the query builder stuff. It can be pretty useful for what it does well.
Obviously, I'm a fan of Quick, but I think QB is very foundational and really can be put into any workflow. When Luis actually tweeted about this article, it just said like QB to him is one of the best libraries for Cold Fusion, and really, like, if you're doing any SQL concatenation, like, this is a tool for you. It can work without any framework. Like, you don't have to dive into the whole ORM thing to get the benefits that QB gives you. So
yeah, because you're not giving up control over the domain model. You're not being forced to deal with objects. But if you're doing those highly dynamic SQL queries, it could really improve the readability. But you're still getting a query at the end of the day, just like you used to do, or an array of structs if you want. So it doesn't enforce any large changes to your overall application.
I still remember CFCasts. I started writing it with Postgres as the backend because I wanted to learn Postgres. Mm-hmm. And when I convinced Luis to take it over as an Ordis project, he said, "Well, we're MySQL. That's the database I have. I'm not doing Postgres." And I changed one line in my config, and I think one query somewhere where I had like a raw statement, and it worked all on MySQL. And I was like, okay.
Because it was using QB.
Because it was using QB. Yep. So there's lots of benefits. Alrighty, enough waxing nostalgic. Thanks for letting me do that. Let's talk about some jobs. There are 2 new jobs this week on getcfmljobs.com, bringing the total to 50 Cold Fusion positions. We have a full-time Cold Fusion developer at Columbia, Maryland in the U.S.
MD, yeah.
And a Cold Fusion developer at Hyderabad, Telangana, India. So check out Get CFML Jobs for that. If you're looking for other jobs, you can check out the jobs channel in both the CFML Slack team and the Box Team Slack team, or on the Solutions website in our About Us section.
So the first one requires experience in Cold Fusion 8 or higher. I sure as heck hope they're not still using Cold Fusion 8.
Well, if that's listed.
Yeah. It's like,
your first job at that company will be get us off Cold Fusion 8. All right, let's talk about ForgeBox and VS Code modules. ForgeBox, I am shamelessly bringing back one of my favorites, which was CB Inertia. All this talk about Stimulus and Hotwire and CB Wire made me want to plug my own thing. So CB Inertia is, what if you could have a single page application without writing an API, where all your models, your handlers, your validation, your routing, all of that stayed in CFML, but you could write all your views in your favorite front-end JavaScript language like Vue or React or Svelte to get all of the nice front-end interactivity that you want. Well, that's what CB Inertia does. It is both a library and a way to integrate with the Inertia.js library. So you can hook those together. CFCasts is built entirely on this. It feels like a single-page application, but I don't have an API anywhere. I don't make API requests anywhere. I get to interact with it just like I would any other CFML application. and all my views are JavaScript files, are view files. So if that interests you, that's CB Inertia. If you'd rather have all that stuff in CFML and leave out as much JavaScript as possible, that's when you're going to want to go look at Hotwire or CBWire, which do a similar thing, but stick in the CFML land. So both are good projects, but I wanted to plug mine since I don't think there's been a release in this in forever. The JavaScript stuff keeps changing, but the server stuff is just good old boring, still works.
So are you updating the JavaScript portions of it?
So the JavaScript portions, this is one of the things I love about it, are updated by the people who make Inertia, because it's a protocol where as long as the server responds with the right status codes and headers, it will consume it. It doesn't care what the server is running on the back end. So you can update your front end with all the cool changes they've done, and it still works with CB Inertia on the Cold Fusion server.
If you use CB Inertia, then the onus is on you to include the right JavaScript files on your front end, and you can grab the latest version of those, basically.
Yep. And you can use Vue, React, or Svelte are the three main supported ones. There's community adapters for other languages as well. I shouldn't say language. I should say frameworks. It's all JavaScript. So.
Right.
Yeah. All right. And then as for the VS Code hint, tip, and trick of the week, we have an extension called Code Spell Checker. So this is the idea that you want spell check in your code, but you don't want it to give you dumb false positives, like when you have camel-cased words. Or HTML versions where they're all underscores or kebab-cased or anything like that. So this is the goal of this is to catch those common spelling errors while keeping the number of false positive lows. And you'll need to enable CFML files to start. We'll have that in the show notes about how you can do that. But just looking kind of at their website, they have a TypeScript file here, and you can see if they type first value wrong or this comment with start wrong, it's going to show those as potential typos. There's ways to annoy each of those.
So if you're doing headless camel case, it's checking each word individually, kind of figuring out where the words start and stop inside of your variables?
Exactly. It breaks it up, nice. Using a regex, and then checks it out.
I like that. I don't know how often I've had a variable name that I typed wrong without realizing it, and then I copy and paste a lot because I'm lazy, and I wind up with that incorrectly spelled variable all over the app, and then I feel so stupid when I finally see it.
I need to check this out, but I will be incredibly happy if it will underline when I type arguments wrong.
Yeah.
And it definitely does. It's telling me that arguments is probably spelled wrong. So thank goodness. I can't tell you how many times I've had arguments.
You just created a variable that was actually variables.arguments. something.
So if anybody wants to see that, I could do arguments.foo or arguments, and it tells me right away, that's probably not what you want. Thank goodness. Because I can't tell you the number of times that I've been running tests why isn't this working? Oh, I can't spell arguments.
Someone in the CFML Slack team just yesterday had an issue. They couldn't figure out what ColdBox, beating our heads against the wall, and it turned out it's a misspelling. One letter was out of place. Oh, that's why it didn't work.
Happens to us all.
Yes, it does.
All right. So that is Code Spell Checker. Remember, once you install it, you do need to enable it. There is a command for enable spell checking document language. You can do it per workspace or per user. I did it per user because I want all my CFML files spell checked. So go ahead and check that one out, and check that out in the show notes. We made it to the end, Brad.
We did, and we took a long time considering how quick it normally goes when it's just the two of us.
That's true.
Well, I guess maybe I'm the X factor that makes everything take so long. You're the quick one, and I keep talking.
No, I went and waxed nostalgic today about QB, and we went on tangents, and I thought it was a good podcast, though. We'll hear from our listeners if they actually enjoyed it. That's for sure.
Tangents are the best part.
Well,
that brings us back to our Patreon supporters. Sorry, we keep interrupting each other.
It's all good.
So again, don't forget the Patreon supporters can be an annual membership. You save 10% when you do that over a monthly. We have the bronze packages and up that get a ForgeBox Pro account. They get a CFCasts subscription as built-in perks. Patreon supporters get a profile badge on the community website to show how cool you are, how lovely you are. You get your own private forum access to the community website, and you get your own private channel access on the Box Team Slack. So you want me to read off our top Patreons?
Our top lovely Patreons, yes.
Our lovely Patreons. We no longer read everyone, just the top Patreons now. We have so many of them. So John Wilson from Synaptrix, Tomorrow's Guides Company, Jordan Clark, Gary Knight, Mario Rodriguez, Giancarlo Gomez, David Bellinger, Dan Carr, Jeffrey McGee from Sunstar Media, Dean Maunder, Nolan Irk, and Abdul Rahim are our top lovely Patreons. So thank you so much to all of our Patreons, regardless of your Patreon level.
Yes.
You can see all of the Patreons at ordersolutions.com/aboutus/Patreons.
About us/sponsors.
Oh, sponsors. Sorry, I can't read. The show notes are too small. I blame my glasses. There's a glare in my eyes.
So, thank you all for listening. Thank you all to our Patreons, our lovely Patreons. Thank you, Order Solutions. And we hope that you have a wonderful Valentine's Day. We'll catch you next week.
Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernizeordie.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.